The sky had been the same shade of cold ash for weeks. No stars, no satellites. Just the dull shimmer of frozen clouds dragging across the ruined heavens like bruises that never healed. I hadn't seen another soul in over a year, not since the last of the orbital stations winked out and the firestorm swallowed the cities. Not since the war ended in silence. Not in victory. My days were shaped by routine: gather wood, boil snow, keep the fire alive, and try not to remember. Stillness had become a kind of scripture to me. A quiet I could live inside without having to answer to the noise of who I used to be. That morning was like any other. I was splitting logs out back when I felt it, not heard, felt. A ripple in the stillness. The kind of disturbance that didn't come from falling branches or shifting snow. It was the air itself, holding its breath. I rounded the corner and saw her. 10 feet from my door, half buried in the snow, a girl, not a girl, a figure, glowing faintly like something trying to be human but built from light. Her hair clung to her like strands of silver thread soaked in ice. Skin pale, almost translucent. And beneath it, faint violet veins pulsed like circuitry. No shoes, no coat. No sign of a world she belonged to. Steam lifted from her skin, rising in slow curls as if her blood was too warm for this dead place. I stood there, axe in hand, unable to move. Then her lips parted. "Hot," she whispered. Her voice was raw, cracked. Her eyelids fluttered. Her body trembled. "Run." And then she collapsed. It was instinct, not reason, that moved me. I dropped the axe, sprinted the last few feet, and knelt beside her. Her skin was like warm glass under snow. She flinched at my touch, but she didn't fight. I lifted her carefully, felt the strange light inside her pulse once against my chest like a heartbeat that didn't belong to this world. Inside, I wrapped her in every blanket I had. The fire popped as I added fresh logs. She barely breathed. Her eyes watched me, too wide, too old. They didn't ask for help. They expected consequence. I poured water over the kettle, tossed in the last of my freeze-dried coffee, melted snow to fill the cup. She sat propped near the stove, half wrapped in wool and memory, and when I placed the steaming mug in her hands, she held it like she was relearning what heat was. She sipped, grimaced, then looked straight at me. "Run," she said again, firmer. This time, before I could speak, something outside groaned. Not like a tree bending or a board creaking, but something alive. Something big. Something that was searching. She didn't panic. She didn't scream. She just closed her eyes like she knew this was coming the moment I touched her. Like I had confirmed what she already feared, that saving her meant I wouldn't be saved. I grabbed the rifle from beneath the bed. Outside, the wind stopped, and the silence turned into something with weight. The fire burned low, throwing long shadows against the cabin walls. I sat with the rifle across my lap, one eye on the door, the other on her. She hadn't moved since she collapsed hours ago. Just curled into the blankets like a question I wasn't ready to ask. The steam had stopped rising off her skin. Her glow had dimmed to a soft pulse under her collarbone, like a dying ember trying not to go out. Outside, the wind had turned. Not colder, just off. The kind of off you feel in your teeth, like pressure before a storm. But there were no clouds coming. No snowfall. Only the kind of stillness predators make when they're close. She stirred. Just a flicker of her hand. Against the blanket, her eyes opened without blinking, wide and alert, not groggy at all. She sat up slowly, like a machine powering on after years of sleep. Her gaze swept the cabin once door, window, fire, me, and then she looked down at the half-finished mug I'd left near her hands. "You're not military," she said. It wasn't a question. "No," I answered. "Not anymore." She nodded slowly, as if that was the only answer that wouldn't get me killed. "Good," she whispered, and then, Finally, she exhaled. Like I'd given her permission to breathe. She lifted the cup again, sipped, winced. No sugar? That caught me off guard. You nearly froze to death in a snowbank, and you're worried about coffee flavor? She shrugged, and for the first time, I saw something in her face. Humor, maybe, a sliver of it. Small but real. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was loaded. Like we were both waiting to see who'd speak next, who'd ask the first. Question that couldn't be taken back. What's your name? I asked. She didn't answer right away. Her eyes didn't flicker. Just the faintest tightening at the corners. Do you mean the one they gave me or the one I kept? Whichever won't get us both killed. Kale, she said after a pause. I repeated it. Kale. Then she surprised me again. And you're Jace. That stopped me. I hadn't told her. I hadn't spoken my name aloud in months, maybe. Longer. I heard it, she said. In the wood. Your cabin pulses differently. The snow echoes. You left a mark. I don't leave marks. You do, she said quietly. The kind that scream in the silence. I didn't sleep that night. Kale did, if you could call it sleep. She lay still, eyes closed, but her breathing was too steady. Like she was trained to fake it. My rifle stayed across my lap as the fire sank lower and the wind turned again. And then, just before dawn, I heard it. A sound that wasn't wind. A low, thudding pulse buried under layers of static. The radio I hadn't powered in weeks clicked to life, then buzzed with a signal, not voice. Not emergency code. A ping. Short, repeating, steady. I leaned in close, adjusted the dial. Encrypted frequency bleed. Not civilian. Not leftover cum chatter. It was a tag search, a reconnaissance drone bouncing location queries across old war channels, looking for something. Or someone. I turned to Kale. She was already awake, staring at me. They're here, she said softly. Who? Cleaners. The way she said it made my skin crawl. Not with fear. With finality. Like the word itself carried gravity. You sure? They're not here for me, she said. They're here for what I touched. Which now includes you? The ping on the radio grew louder, faster. She stood, swaying slightly, and pressed. Her palm against the cabin wall, like she was listening to the wood itself. I thought I had more time, she said. They always track echoes eventually. They just took longer this time. What are they? She looked at the floor for a long moment, then said, There's silence in motion. They don't kill. They erase. That word made something deep. In my chest shift. Erase. As in, wipe clean. As in, make it so the person, the moment, the memory never existed. How do we stop them? You don't, she said. You survive them. If you're lucky. We spent the next hours reinforcing the cabin. Not that it would help much. Wood, old wiring, a few energy cells, a rifle with 2 working charges. It was a bandage on a bullet wound. But we tried anyway. Because trying meant we weren't dead yet. By nightfall, the snow had stopped falling. The sky above the trees was clear but wrong. Colors shimmered faintly above the horizon, like the auroras were bleeding into the atmosphere again. Kale stood at the window, arms crossed over her chest. Her glow had brightened, just slightly. You could leave, she said. Without turning, I shook my head. Unless you're planning to bury the cabin behind me, not an option. She almost smiled again. They'll track me. They always do. They don't forget. And you? Her eyes met mine. They were glowing now, not brightly. Just enough to catch the firelight. You do. I said nothing, because I wasn't sure if... She was right. Then, somewhere deep in the woods, something moved. Not like an animal. Not like wind. Something heavy. Deliberate. And getting closer. The snowflakes weren't falling anymore. They were hanging. suspended midair like beads on invisible threads, drifting sideways, spiraling in slow motion. It was like time had cracked, just a little, letting something bleed through. Kale stood, motionless near the cabin door, her breath rising in perfect plumes, too steady, too slow. Her eyes shimmered like polished glass, reflecting a horizon I couldn't see. "They're close," she said. "How close?" 2 miles, maybe less. I checked the rifle again. Only 2 charges left. I remembered when this weapon felt like power in my hands. Now it felt like denial. Like hope dressed up in metal and heat. Too small to change anything. Kale stepped beside me, not behind. Not sheltered, but beside. "If I tell you to run," she whispered, "you run." "You already told me once," she nodded, "and you didn't listen." There was no anger in her voice, just quiet certainty. I looked past the frost-caked window, searching for shadows. The forest wasn't moving. Not the trees. Not the birds. Not even the wind. Everything was still, like the world was bracing. "They won't knock," Kale said softly. "They don't believe in second warnings." A shiver ran up my spine. "What are they, Kale?" She didn't answer. Just closed her eyes and let out a breath like she was preparing herself to stop, being human again. Then the silence broke, not with sound, but with presence, the kind of weight you feel in your chest before a storm hits, the pressure in your teeth before lightning strikes. Footsteps. Heavy, measured, too synchronized to be human, too quiet to be mechanical. I peered through the slit. Above the door. 3 figures emerged from the tree line. Tall, armored, faceless. There, armor shimmered like moving watercolors slipping beneath the surface. Each carried a long, curved weapon that rippled with translucent light as if the blade itself was forged from memory. They didn't stomp. They didn't charge. They glided. This wasn't a hunt. It was a sentencing. "They're not just cleaners," Kale said. "They're higher? Higher?" She nodded slowly. "They sent judges." "What does that mean?" "It means they've already decided I'm guilty." I looked at her, jaw tight. "And what about me?" "You chose to help." Her words were ice in my blood. "That's enough." I raised the rifle. "Then let's give them a reason to regret that decision." Kale turned toward me, and for the first time since she arrived, her glow didn't just return, it ignited. Light burst from beneath her skin in pulses, each one brighter than the last. Her veins lit like molten silver, tracing ancient maps across her arms, her throat, her chest, and her eyes. Her eyes turned white. "Not blank. Radiant. Double quotes, no," she said, calm and absolute. "You don't raise your weapon here, Kale. They didn't come to fight. They came to observe, to test. They want to see what we become when pushed." "They're playing a game?" "No, they're writing the rules as they go." The front of the cabin didn't explode with fire. It collapsed under pressure. The hinges screamed. The wood splintered inward like it had been vacuumed out of place. The first judge stepped inside. Weapon raised, I fired. The blast hit center mass. A direct shot. It didn't fall. It barely paused. Kale walked forward, not ran. Walked, arms raised, palms open, voice low and vibrating with a frequency I couldn't hear but felt deep in my teeth. The second judge moved to flank. I turned to fire again, but Kale was already glowing brighter, her light cutting through the shadows, pushing the air back. Then everything blinked. The fire dimmed. The snow outside froze mid-motion again. My breath stopped in my throat. When the world snapped back, the first and second figures were gone. Not dead. Gone. No bodies. No sound. Only a fracture in the air, like the world had cracked where they stood. Like a hole had been carved in reality. The third figure remained. It didn't raise its weapon. It tilted its head and stepped backward 1 foot at a time, then disappeared into the night, leaving only steaming footprints behind. Kale collapsed. Her Glow flickered. Chaotic, erratic, like a machine overheating. I caught her before she hit the floor. Her skin was burning hot. You okay? I asked, voice hoarse. She blinked slowly. Not built for long fights anymore. What the hell were they? My old shadows, she whispered. The ones I left behind. Her eyes fluttered shut, and still, even then, she didn't look afraid. Just tired. Kale slept for 18 hours. I didn't sleep at all. The cabin smelled like ash and fear. The fire was out. The world outside was quiet again, but not the mate, peaceful kind. The aftermath kind. The kind of silence that sits heavy in your chest, reminding you that something violent just happened, and something worse might still be coming. I didn't know what. Kale really was. I didn't know what I had just witnessed, but I knew this. I was already in too deep to walk away. The snow fell in reverse, not a metaphor, not a trick of the wind. It rose flakes drifting upward in spirals, defying gravity, caught in invisible currents that tugged towards something unseen in the clouds. I stood on the porch, rifle across. My back, boots buried in white, watching the world misbehave. Kale was beside me, barefoot again. She didn't shiver. She didn't speak. Her skin was dim now, her glow pulsing faintly under her collarbone like a heartbeat trying not to be heard. She was listening. The sky hummed. They're close, she said. Cleaners? She shook her head slowly. No. Worse. I turned to her. Her eyes didn't meet mine. They were fixed on the horizon, on three dark shapes gliding across the snow like they didn't need to touch it. Worse than assassins that erase people? Kale finally looked at me. These don't erase, she said. They record, they rewrite. My stomach twisted. You mean they kill memories? I mean they make it so I never existed. She stepped off the porch. I followed, crunching through. Snow behind her, scanning the tree line for anything else. There was nothing but white and stillness, and those three tall shapes approaching slowly, deliberately. They didn't carry weapons. They didn't need to. They wore cloaks of something that shimmered without moving. Their faces were smooth, reflective, ovals like mirrors dipped in fog. As they stepped closer, I realized I saw myself in them, not my face. Not exactly. My guilt. My desertion. The moment I stood over my brother's grave. The night I almost ended myself and didn't. It was all there, flashing back at me from the curve of their skin. Kale stood straighter. They won't speak to you, she said. Why not? They're not here for you. They're here to overwrite me, bring me back to default, turn me into the obedient thing they built before I touched too many lives. You mean erase who you became? She nodded. I've been many things, she whispered, but I earned this version. The one who ran, the one who chose not to kill, the one who stayed. Then she stepped forward. I started to follow instinct. Reflex, but her voice caught me. No, she said. You can't come with me where they'll try to drag me. I froze. One of the figures raised its hand, and the world folded. I didn't see light. I didn't hear sound. I felt memory being peeled from my skull like old paint. My brother's laugh. Gone. The smell of firewood on my coat. Gone. The first time. I saw Kale on the snow, flickering. I fell to one knee. She staggered too. Her hands went to her head, but she didn't scream. She glowed. And for the first time since she'd arrived, she didn't dim it. She let it burn. Let them see, she growled. Her skin lit up like a star. The snow boiled around her feet. The nearest judge stepped back, shielding its blank face. Another raised both arms, and the air screamed not sound, but the absence of it. A vacuum that sucked all warmth, all identity from the world. Kale dropped to her knees, convulsing. Her glow spasmed. I tried to move, but my legs weren't working. They weren't here to kill her. They were here to unmake her. I had one shot left. In the rifle, my vision swam. I lifted it, braced it against the pain in my skull, and fired. The shot cracked through the silence. One of the figures jerked. Just a little. It turned toward me, not in pain, not in fear, but with judgment. That awful, mirror-like mask showing me myself again. And that's when I realized they weren't watching Kale. They were watching me, testing me. Would I forget her? Would I hide? Obey? Betray her? Would I let them unwrite her? Or would I do something dangerous? Something human? Kale crumpled in the snow. I ran to her, dropped to my knees, and wrapped my arms around her like she was fire and I was done with the cold. I held her close, and I said her name, out loud, without shame, with everything I had left inside me. Kale. The air cracked. The sky buckled. Something ancient and unnatural shattered. A burst of light erupted from her, not heat, not radiation memory. It washed over me, through me, not just my own, hers too. Her first mission, the child who offered her a flower. The night she fled, the echo she followed through the cold. The judges stepped back, not in defeat, but in recognition. They had their answer. And one by one, they vanished into the rising snow. Kale was breathing. Barely. I held her tighter. You're still here, I whispered. She blinked. You remembered me, she said. You didn't let me forget. The cabin had never felt warm before. Not truly. Not in the months I'd lived there alone, speaking only to the wind and the fire and the dead weight of my thoughts. Not even during blizzards when the stove roared and every wall sweated with trapped heat. But now, as Kale lay curled on the floor beside the hearth, breath slow, pulse faint but steady beneath her glowing skin, I realized something had changed. The warmth wasn't just heat anymore. It was presence. It was her. I stayed beside her all night. The fire cracked low, and I didn't feed it. I just listened to her breathe and tried not to think about what would have happened if I hadn't said her name, if I'd let them win. I didn't know what the judgment class had truly been. I didn't know where they came from or why they obeyed silence like it was a law written in the bones of the universe. But I knew what they tried to take, and I knew I wasn't giving it up. When she stirred, hours later, it was like watching someone wake from a memory instead of sleep. She blinked, not startled, just aware. Her eyes found mine. She smiled. You said my name, she whispered. You said mine first. She laughed softly, and it sounded like sunlight breaking through cloud cover for the first time in years. You called me Kale. That matters. I nodded. You're not theirs anymore, I said. Her smile faded, but not completely. I was never meant to survive, she murmured. Not after I ran, not after I chose. But you did. She nodded, and her forehead rested gently against mine, and so did you. We stayed like that until the cold started to bite again, reminding us the world outside still didn't care whether we survived it or not. I helped her to the couch, wrapped her in thick wool, and relit the fire with trembling hands. My body felt like stone, my mind still echoing. They'll try again, Kale said. Different forms, different methods. That's what they do. I poured water into the kettle and placed it on the stove. Then we'll stop them again. You don't have to stay. I turned to her. Kale, I've always had the choice to leave. She watched me in silence for a long moment. Her eyes softened. And yet, she said. And yet, I handed her the mug. She drank without hesitation this time. Still no sugar, still half snowmelt, but she didn't complain. Instead, she looked at me with something I hadn't seen in her before, not caution, not wariness, but trust. Deep and open and aching. You could have traded me, she said. Turned. MEN for supplies, protection, power. I didn't want those things. Then what did you want? I didn't answer right away. I sat across from her, watching the fire throw our shadows on the walls like ghosts that refused to leave. To stop being alone, I said finally. Her hands tightened around the mug. She didn't speak, but her breath caught, just once. That was enough. We buried the rifle the next morning, not because it was broken, it could be fixed, but because we didn't want to fix it. That weapon had taken lives, protected them too, maybe, but it was built for a world we weren't living in anymore. The grave we dug was shallow. Beneath the oldest tree behind the cabin, we placed the rifle inside like a body and covered it with earth, stone, and silence. Kale stood barefoot again, even in the frost. She said nothing, but I watched her fingers twitch slightly, tracing something invisible in the air. A symbol. A goodbye. Over the next few days, the air warmed, slightly. The sun pushed through cloud banks like a wounded thing trying to rise again. Birds returned. One or two, skittish, quiet. Kale started humming one morning while cooking some alien tune. I didn't recognize. Its rhythm was strange but soft. I found myself tapping the table along with it. She smiled without turning around. You're adapting. God help me, I muttered. I think I am. Later that same day, I stepped outside and realized I didn't want to leave. Not the cabin, not the woods, not her. The world had ended twice over, and somehow what was left wasn't just ash and fear. It was her. Kale sat on the porch at twilight, legs tucked beneath her, face tilted toward the sky. The stars had returned, faint but real. I stepped beside her and sat down, the cold biting. Through the wood, but I didn't care. I used to think names didn't matter, she said. I looked at her, head tilted. Now I know they do, she continued. Being remembered is survival. Then I'll remember you, I said. She turned, and this time her smile didn't fade. It was full, real, unbroken, and I'll remember you too, Jace. We weren't lovers, not yet, but something had bloomed between us. Something deeper than romance. Something more enduring than survival. Recognition. Trust. The rarest kind of bond. Two broken people who didn't try to fix each other, just stayed. She was more than alien. She was human in all the best ways, and me? Maybe I was. Finally learning how to be again. The ice cracked under my boots like old bones. Morning came slow, dragging light across the snow as if even the sun wasn't sure it wanted to see what the world had become. The air smelled like thaw, that rare edge of spring that felt impossible after so many months of frost and silence. But there it was, the melt. Quiet, creeping, undeniable. Kale stood in it barefoot. Her arms were slightly raised, not in prayer, not in defense, just open. Her silver blue hair drifted behind her, caught in a wind I couldn't feel. You hear something? I asked. She nodded. Another memory walker? No, worse. The word dropped like a stone in a lake. No echo, no explanation. I stepped beside her, squinting at the tree line. Nothing moved, no signals. No pings, no shadows. What is it? She didn't look at me. She just closed her eyes. They call it the echo engine. What does it do? She was quiet for a beat too long. It doesn't kill, doesn't erase, doesn't chase. Then what? It listens. She turned to me. Her eyes were wide, frightened in a way I hadn't seen before. It finds emotion, disturbances, connections that shouldn't exist. It's a machine designed to detect resonance, the kind created when someone like me survives and someone like you cares. My blood ran cold. What happens if it finds us? It replicates silence, she said. Perfectly, permanently. It doesn't hunt like the cleaners or judge like the memory walkers. It just unthreads what binds. She stepped back inside the cabin, slow, deliberate. I followed, closing the door behind us like it could somehow stop what was coming. The radio, long dead, crackled. Not words. Not signals. Just breathing. Soft. Familiar. It was mine. I froze. Kale touched the wall, wincing like the structure itself had flinched. It's here, she whispered. It's already begun. Outside, the wind stopped. The frost on the windows melted not from heat, but from revision. Like the past itself was being rewritten. I picked up the kettle with shaking hands and poured snowmelt into the pot. The stove hissed like it resented the flame. The fire wasn't crackling anymore. It was humming. Low. Tonal. A frequency that didn't belong. What do we do? I asked. Kale looked at me with something close to desperation. We survive it. I stepped toward her. How? You said we can't fight it. Not with weapons. Then with what? She took a deep breath, as if pulling strength from something invisible. Memory. Feeling. The very thing it was built to erase. We can't hide that. No, but we can flood it. She moved fast after that. Faster than I'd seen her move since the night the cleaners came. She scattered glyphs on the windows, etched strange shapes into the walls with a piece of scorched bone. I opened every drawer, every cabinet, searching for something, anything that meant something. A picture of my brother. My old dog tag. A child's drawing I'd tucked into a book I hadn't opened in years. Pieces of who I was. We lit every candle. We played every note on the broken stringless guitar until the room rang with dissonance. And then we sat across from each other. You said the engine listens. I whispered. She nodded. Then we give it a story it can't forget. The floorboard shook. Not with weight. With intention. I felt it in my chest, like a memory being pulled from a wound. The cabin shimmered. The walls turned translucent, revealing not outside but for. I saw myself, younger, angry, holding a rifle and screaming at a man I loved. I saw the moment I walked away from the war. The child I didn't save. The life I never lived. Kale screamed and her body lit with violet light. The cabin began to fold, not collapse, fold. Like paper being creased until all that remained was blank space. Jace, she gasped. They're trying to make us forget why we stayed. I reached for her hand. You told me memory is survival. She nodded, eyes glassy. Then remember me. The hum spiked into a pitch that wasn't sound. It was absence. The photos curled inward. The pages of my journal went blank. The drawing burned, but I didn't let go. Not of her. Not of the warmth we'd built. I pulled her into my arms, and I whispered, not shouted, her name. Kale. The hum broke. It didn't fade. It shattered. Like glass under a truth too loud to silence. Light poured out of her, not energy, emotion. Raw, unfiltered. It flooded the cabin, touched every corner, every memory, every hidden scar. And suddenly the pictures restored. The notes returned. The journal rewrote itself in my own handwriting. The engine recoiled. The walls turned, solid again. The snow outside resumed its fall, this time downward. Kale collapsed in my arms, but she was smiling. You remembered me again, she whispered. Always. And the hum was gone, just like that. No explosion, no retreat, just absence, like the universe had blinked, then remembered who we were. The silence afterward wasn't empty. It was full of breath, of heat, of presence. And for the first time in forever, I didn't feel erased. I felt alive. The thaw came slowly, like the world was still deciding whether or not to forgive itself. Ice retreated from the eaves of the cabin. The trees stopped cracking in protest of the cold. Rivers, long silent beneath glassy sheaths of snow, began to murmur again beneath the surface. Life didn't return with a roar, but with a whisper. And maybe that was better. Maybe the quiet things deserved to come back. First. Kale hadn't glowed in days. Not the way she used to. Her light was still there. But it had changed, settled, like embers instead of wildfire. She moved softer now, slower, not because she was weak, but because she didn't need to run anymore. We sat on the porch together, watching the tree line sway. Her legs dangled off the edge, toes brushing the softened snow. She still didn't wear shoes. "You're going to lose a toe one day," I said. "I'd grow a new one," she replied. I looked sideways at her. She shrugged. Eventually. It was the most human thing I'd ever heard her say. That morning, she brought me flowers. A bundle of violet blooms I'd never seen before, some alien mix between starbursts and crystals, delicate, shimmering but warm too. "The touch. For the table," she said. I raised an eyebrow. "Expecting guests?" "No," she said, placing them carefully in a mason jar. "But I'm not hiding anymore." There was nothing dramatic about it. No final battle. No third wave of enemies. The echo engine didn't come back. The cleaners didn't return. The sky didn't split open with judgment. But the silence lingered, and we both knew that didn't mean it was over. "You think they'll send more?" I asked one night, our mugs steaming in our hands, the fire behind us spitting sparks like laughter. Kale nodded slowly. "Not like before. Not soldiers. Not weapons. Ideas." I waited. Whispers in the dark. Algorithms coded to make you doubt. Scars that ask you to reopen them. Things that don't knock down your door, they ask you to leave it open yourself. That sounds worse. She smiled faintly. "It is, but it's also slower. And slower means we can live in between." She wasn't wrong. We fell into a rhythm, not survival, living. The kind that creeps up on you, where one morning you realize you're cooking eggs and arguing about spices. Where you find her humming songs with no words and you join in because it makes her laugh. We didn't sleep beside each other. Not yet, but our silences overlapped. Our spaces softened. We sat closer. She sketched less. Laughed more. I cleaned out the shortwave antenna just to hear what wasn't out there anymore. Static had never sounded so peaceful. Then one day, I found a note in the windowsill. Handwritten in Kale's slanted script. "Gone to collect light. Back before dark. Don't burn the cabin down." There were flowers in the corner of the page. I stared at it longer than I should have. Not because I was worried, but because I hadn't realized until that moment that the fear was gone. I wasn't afraid she wouldn't come back. I believed in her return. And when she did, hair windswept, cheeks flushed, her arms full of glowing vine-like stalks she'd found growing in a sunken crater. We didn't say anything. She just handed one to me and said, "For your side of the table." I placed it in the jar beside hers. They didn't match. But they didn't have to. That night, I dreamed not of war, not of silence. I dreamed of a warm place, of a cabin filled with light, of footsteps coming up the path, but not enemies, not hunters, friends, people, survivors. Other echoes learning how to sing again. When I woke, Kale was already up. She was watching the stars with that same tilted head expression she always wore when listening to things too far away for me to hear. "What is it?" I asked. She didn't speak right away. Then she said, "They'll remember us now." I stepped beside her. "You mean the others?" "No, the ones who watch, who record, the ones who tried to unmake. They won't forget. And that scares them?" She nodded. "Good," I said. She smiled. "You still think I'm dangerous?" She asked. I looked at her, then really looked at her. At the girl who had collapsed in my snow, who warned me with her first breath, who lit up the world just by refusing to disappear, only to the ones who thought they owned you. "And you?" I shook my head. "To me, you're real, that's all." Her smile didn't fade this time. It deepened, softened, curled like spring finally showing through frost. And then she said it. The last thing I expected. The thing I hadn't realized I was waiting to hear. "My name is Kale," she whispered, "and I remember you, Jace." I stepped closer. The wind moved through us like a sigh. "I remember you too," I said. We stood in the silence, but it wasn't the kind I used to worship. Not the weaponized kind that taught me to forget. This silence was full of presence, not of names spoken. Of memories kept. Of two people choosing to stay. In a world built to erase us. We made the unforgivable decision to remember each other, and the universe would never be able to undo tha.